Good evening and welcome to this month's episode of In the Hood, where we discuss crucial issues of the church and society from a Capuchin Franciscan point of view. We welcome you to this show this evening, and so what we've seen with the immigration issue here in the United States right now. You'll see that we also have a little bit of a different format this evening because we're going to have sort of what we hope is going to be a lively conversation, a lively discussion of these issues from some somewhat different points of view. So I want to first of all introduce our two hosts, our two guests this evening, Father Simeon Gallagher and Father Barnabas Eicher. And maybe, Father Simeon, you can
Sure.
say a little bit about yourself. And
First of all, you can see that I got my makeup all turned around. I had some surgery done because of skin cancers, and I didn't realize that walking on my forehead was going to lead to two black eyes as well. So, as Brother Mark mentioned, my name is Simeon Gallagher, and for a number of years I have been involved in what we call preaching ministry. And that has been a source of great education and enlargement for me because it has taken me basically all over this country and even beyond. And I'm very happy to be with you tonight. From a distance, I've always admired these programs, and I'm sure that we will have a lively discussion tonight. So thank you for having Father Barnabas and myself.
I am Father Barnabas Eicher. Over the last few years, I have been a priest, a pastor, an associate pastor, done quite a bit of prison ministry as well. And I'm currently the chaplain for Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese here in Denver, Colorado. I spend a lot of time working with the homeless and the homeless shelters and immigrants as well.
okay. And I, of course, I'm Brother Mark Shank. I'm the provincial minister of the province, and I'm going to be sort of moderating this discussion this evening. And we'll also take, toward the end of the program, we'll take questions from the audience. And so you can put your questions there in the chat box on YouTube, or you can send them in by email to inthehood, all one word, inthehood at capuchins.org. And hopefully we'll get to your questions at the end of the program. I don't know if we'll have time to take all of them, but we'll do our best. So before we begin, I just want to, as we always do, start with a little prayer. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord, to whom no one is a stranger, and from whose help no one is ever distant, look with compassion on refugees and exiles, on segregated persons, and on their lost children. Restore them, we pray, to a homeland, and give them a kind heart for the needy and for strangers. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever.
Amen.
And Father and Son and the Holy Spirit. So, to set up this discussion for this evening, um, you know, in our episode last April, we actually talked about immigration already, and we laid out the three principles of Catholic social teaching regarding immigration, which were taken from the encyclical Rerum Novarum of 1891. And those three principles are that, first of all, people have a right to migrate to sustain their lives and the lives of their families. Secondly, a country has the right to regulate its borders and to control immigration. And thirdly, a country must regulate its borders with justice and mercy. Now, those are the three sort of theoretical principles, and what we discussed last April, and we don't want to rehash that discussion in a sense, but uh, these principles have taken on new meaning recently since the inauguration of President Trump and the introduction of the new administration in the country. Here in Denver, for instance, as in many other countries, in the cities around the country, we have seen dawn raids on apartment buildings that are inhabited mostly by immigrants. We've witnessed families that are being separated. Some of them are taken away and some of them are left behind. Uh, Many of the people with whom we work, because we happen to work with a lot of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, and many of those people with whom we work have expressed fear and anxiety about their futures. Some have stopped going to work because they fear raids in the workplace. Some have stopped sending their children to school because they're afraid that ICE may show up at their school. So there's a lot of anxiety in these communities. And this issue has taken on sort of distinctly Catholic element this time around, as our Vice President J.D. Vance, who is a Catholic, quoted St. Augustine's use of the Ordo Amoris to justify the administration's actions, and has accused Catholic bishops of being more interested in the money that Catholic Charities receives for its immigrant services than in people's lives and in well-being. So it's taken on quite a sort of a Catholic uh, element this time around. So this evening we want to have this lively discussion around the current immigration policies of the U.S. administration, and we hope that it's a discussion that provides more light than heat. Although I'm expecting a little bit of heat anyway. So I want to start out by asking each of you, and I'll start with you, Simeon, because you have altitude, as we say in the France. Um, in what we are seeing and hearing from the federal government about the deportation of immigrants right now in the United States, is this compatible, do you think, with the three principles that I laid out just now?
Well, as you mentioned, every country has a right to protect its borders. I don't remember any Catholic documentation justifying open borders so that anyone who wanted to come could come. Um, but I think this deportation, as it's being presently conducted, is disorganized. It's not done with clarity. People who are legal and who have been here for a while have been also part of being scooped up and separated from their families and so forth. So I think that we have to acknowledge that, uh, like you mentioned, that we people have a right to migrate, but that has to be done in a legal fashion, not to be overbearing and encase them in law, but for their own protection and their own security, so that when they go from one place, they have the legitimate documentation. That would, I think, be in sync with Catholic teaching, but the reality, the existential reality of what's happening around the country does not match that particular criteria. Um, because there are kids who have been used to locate their parents because they've been taken out of their classrooms and so forth. Um, at the background, it seems to me, with all of this, is that unfortunately, and I don't want to predominate here, but the whole immigration system of this country is broken. And we can't do justice to these folks if we don't work on correcting the immigration. Years ago, nations were given quotas, and most of the quotas pertain to European immigration. Today, there's very few people coming from Europe, as they did in Ireland, Germany, Eastern Europe. And today the folks are coming from Latin America, Central America, Africa, the Caribbean, and the system is not prepared to handle this because the system itself is in confusion. So the deportation issue becomes even more complex because the system is broken and it can't handle this.
How do you see the issue?
Um, Actually, I agree with everything Father Simeon said. But I would say, and I would say this, part of the reason we are in the mess right now is precisely because we've had that broken immigration system for so long. And what has happened in this country, and if you really look into this, what is happening with immigration is it's become so intertwined with the drug trade now. And it used to be the drug cartels down in Latin America would get the drugs across the border and then they'd bring it to U.S. citizens here who would then do the dealing. Right now, you have these drug cartels, they're bringing in their own people and they're creating and setting up these uh, gangs and drug distribution centers here. And, a lot of the immigrant, and that is something you just have to deal with because it is so devastating to this country. This drug trade, especially now with fentanyl and other drugs. But yes, one thing we do have to do is get our immigration system simplified and make it accessible to people who, for good reasons, would like to come here for employment and the like. But we have got to get control of our borders back. I had to laugh. There was one of the things Donald Trump is, I want the border in Canada shut too. And the guy comes out up there in Canada, and he comes out and he's got like 35 pounds of fentanyl. He says, this is all the fentanyl that we have. Well, it turns out that's enough fentanyl to kill over 5 million people. And he was kind of smug about it. We don't have a big drug factory. You got enough right there to kill 5 million people. And these drug cartels are not just here, they are in many other countries. And the drug problem, some of it's demand, but once you get people hooked, it just keeps going and going. And it is just devastating to this country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Barnabas. So President Trump has said that he wants to prioritize the deportation of criminals, which I think in a way everyone would agree with that. But many you find on the social media, and you hear this very often, and many would say that mere fact that someone who has crossed the border into our country bypassing the legal process makes them a criminal. So, they should be deported. So, do you think that someone who has crossed the border and requested asylum without going through the normal legal channels should be treated as a criminal?
Oh, you threw in something you didn't last time. But first, yes, if somebody comes here and just bypasses the whole thing, doesn't try to get in and just wants to do that and just be here and work without going through any of that legal process, yeah, yes, you are a criminal. That's true in every country on this planet. Yeah, if you bypass that, you have people coming into the country, you don't know who they are, coming in. Yes, that is a criminal act. I think part of what's going wrong here is the question of the proportionality of what do you do about it. Okay. Um, do you brutally grab them, throw them in a truck, and take them to the border and throw them down? Go. It's not. That's not at all proportionate. You still have to deal with those with justice and compassion. Who are you? Let's let's get you legal. Why are you here? Do you have a good legal reason to be here? Oh, you're part of that drug gang from Venezuela. We got 3 homicide accounts. Okay. Ridiculously different things, right? But yes, technically you are a criminal if you come here and do that. You do that in Mexico, which was something I kind of laughed. They give you a very long prison sentence. You just come here, and what is Canada going to do? Same thing. Uh, Canada probably just sends you back. But yeah, technically that is a crime. The question is, what do we do about it? I mean, if you have a person who's come here, they don't speak the language, they haven't come and not, and simply maybe because of that, they have a real hard time getting into the whole process of becoming legal here. And they have a good reason to be here. Uh, they're just looking from very poor family. They just want to be in a place where their kids can have education. Like, okay, there, yeah. Um, Someone we could work with. Do we need a system where, before you come, we go through the legal review of who you are? Is it safe for us Americans to have you come up here? I think that would be kind of reasonable as well. But I mean, you have to treat them, yeah, but okay, you're here illegally. How do we fix that? That's, and how do we do that in a merciful and just way? That's it. But yeah, that's a crime. That's a technically and legally. Yeah.
Okay. Simeon, I want to direct this question to you. So last year, there were at times hundreds of immigrants arriving here, or at least dozens arriving here in Denver just in a short amount of time. And it put strains on our social services and on our schools. And this happened in many places around the country, and it happens, I'd say, regularly along the borders, border towns in the South. What would you say to people who felt that their safety and their way of life was threatened by the sudden, unregulated influx of immigrants, or who feel that the benefits that should be going to them as citizens are being redirected to immigrants?
Well, we have to remember how those people were sent here. That they were sent here by governors who had put them on buses and on planes, and these poor people did not know where they were being sent. Um, if I'm not mistaken, the governor in Florida did that, and the governor in
Oh,
Texas did that.
that's
Just and that these people uh, struggling in themselves and in their own life situations were now being used for political purposes. Um, just taking them and dumping them on Cape Cod, on Martha's Vineyard, and so forth. Thanks be to God, Catholic Charities came in and helped these folks, uh, got them squared away, and helped them with food and shelter and clothing, etc. So the background of how these people came was unjust on the part of state governments and just use them and dump them. That's hardly, it seems to me, an intelligent way of dealing with the problem. And suddenly, the cities were not prepared to handle this influx. And of course, the resources had to be used to the best possible, in the best possible way to take care of them. So I think that that has also got to be factored into the picture because these people in their own right were trying to find, in many cases, perhaps some of them were criminal, you know,
small percentage.
well,
That's not the majority of course.
but still to
Yeah.
use them in that fashion and to use them as a source of embarrassment and so forth for the places where they're being sent. So yes, they're going to tax the resources. Yes, they're going to tax the arrangements in a community. I'm backing out of that by simply saying, once again, this is an indication of the brokenness and the fragmentation of the immigration system and the ill preparedness that some of these places are experiencing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, this question I'll direct to both of you. I'll let Barnabas go first here. Talking about those three principles that enumerated at the beginning of the show, it seems that a large majority of American Catholics and Christians in general would basically understand and agree with the first two principles that I mentioned, namely that people have a right to migrate and that a country has a right to regulate its borders. But maybe where opinions diverge the most is in how they understand the third principle, which is that borders must be regulated with justice and mercy. So, for you, what does justice and mercy look like in an immigration policy?
What would justice and mercy look like? That would be if people want to come here and they want to immigrate, they would have to go to the legal process of doing that. And if they they're not a danger, not a threat, they they can be employed, they're employable, and there's a good reason, economic reason, say the reasons they want to immigrate is economic. And there are good, in that case, a good reason to to allow them to come in. That would be merciful. That would be an extension of mercy to that person. And it would be just in the sense that we're letting people in who would benefit and need to immigrate. Okay. Um, that's what that would look like to me. Uh, you have someone just wanting to come here and immigrate, and let's say they're very well educated. They're coming from some Western European country. Okay. Um, I know, no, they just want to come here to Denver because they want to live in Denver. Okay, let's look at our resources. Who else more needy and who could benefit more coming here? Someone poor from those countries. Well, they would certainly be the priority. That that would be the just part to it. If you want to immigrate here, okay, that's fine. And you're not going to be a real tax on the economy on anything. But there are a whole lot of other people that would benefit much more so than someone who just from Europe, wealthy person from Europe who just wants to live in Denver because they like Denver.
Want to go skiing?
Yeah. Uh, uh, just would be let's let the people who would really benefit from coming here do that first. So I would put it that way. And in I love the Simeon's conversation about those resources. You live in a world where resources are finite and limited. This whole and well, one of the things that was going on with that is that let's go dump these in the cities. Just that way, it would really stir up the issue and make people mad. And that way, we could start winning on this immigration issue. Let's just send them all to New York and make New York a mess. That way, we'll get New York. See if we can turn the voting time. Is absolutely disgusting. That's using people as political pawns.
Yes, exactly.
And that's, yeah, you're taking poor, needy people and just weaponize that's, but that, all of that being said, when you have immigrants, and let's say they're poor immigrants, they come in, they are going to need food, shelter, housing, but and they are going to tax our um, the resources that we do have. There is a point where and allowing immigrants here is really going to start hurting the poor here as well. It's they call economics the dismal science for a reason, and that's because it's a bummer. There are trade-offs. But okay, I've gone on a bit much about this, but I think the mercy and the justice part would be allowing those who would benefit the most to be on the top of the list of those that we are going to allow to immigrate here. That would be my.
I agree with that completely because I think that the justice issue is terribly important for their own sake, but also for the existing society.
Oh yeah,
But the face of that justice has got to be marked by mercy. so that people are not just discarded or
So
rounded
did
up.
you say you do agree?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
I was
mean,
going to
I
say
think that
you and I are going to have to
no,
rumble if you did.
the two are
Oh no,
hand,
they're the same.
they're
They're the
hand in
same
hand.
thing. I
They're
mean,
hand,
well, not the same thing, but you can't take them apart.
but I mean, if you're dealing with justice, it's an important element in the maintenance of society, and
Oh yeah,
so, but the administration of justice has got to have the face of mercy, so
right.
that people are not just thrown
Hmm.
all together, and there's no
Like they're all
differentiation.
the same and like they're equally
They're not.
needy. No, they're not.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I don't think that there's a contradiction between the two at all there.
Oh no, no. That was the point I was making. There isn't a contradiction between them, and that or the justice reaches a merciful decision that is that the most needy and those who would benefit the most ought to be the ones who be allowed first to come here.
Yeah. But then, we have to sort of also appreciate uh, the face of mercy has got to be marked. I mean, what is mercy? Is it creating excuses? Is it allowing things to happen that shouldn't be happening? And so I think that mercy has to be marked by understanding,
Hmm.
by intelligence, by analysis,
By empathy.
and compassion, empathy. Um, it's not an open sort of word that doesn't
Right.
have delineations and differentiations. You know,
Yeah, and we're dealing with human beings, and if we can't empathize with these other human beings that want to come in from all kinds of backgrounds, we are not going to have a just system. Justice means treating a human being as a human being and loving them as ourselves. And that has nothing to do with our current immigration
no.
system. It really doesn't, and that's
And
that's.
the other thing to remember is that we are not the only country struggling with this.
Oh no! Oh
I
no!
mean,
These German elections right now. Oh, it's all
there
about it.
there is an ocean of immigration
Yeah.
going on all over the world.
Yeah.
And some of the countries have not responded well in their own kind of way, as we've
Oh.
not responded well at times in
Oh
our
yeah. No.
particular.
Yeah. And
Um,
then you end up with these really awful backlashes against people like you see in some of these European countries. That's fine.
well,
And they're not integrating these people. They all end up in their own slum areas. And it's just ridiculous.
So, Simeon, as a Catholic priest, what would you say to those who feel that their jobs are being taken away or that their wages are being undercut by recent immigrants?
well, I think that's a myth, for one thing. I don't think that the immigration people that are coming as immigrants are usurping um, jobs and taking away resources and funding, et cetera, that are somehow to me that smacks of a rhetoric of exclusiveness and exclusion rather than a way of really dealing with the issue. This is a very large country, a very large country, and a very wealthy country. And if I could use my own parents, I'm first generation in this country. And my parents came, as did many in that European immigration of the 19th century and 20th century, with limited educations. And they were willing to take whatever jobs were available in order to send money back home to the people that they had left behind, as well as to build a kind of nest egg for themselves. I think that if people um, who are coming to this country are doing that, they're not taking away jobs and resources from people that are already here. So I've heard that argument, listened to that before, and then I think about my own parents. They worked hard, they established themselves, they created a life for my brother and myself. Um, so the resources are not being siphoned off. And I don't believe that they're taking jobs. unless um, some of these the people that have come and some of these people that have come to our country from some of the foreign countries, including Central and Latin America, are coming with very high tech educations, and they're willing to work hard in order to find jobs in that field. So I don't think that they're taking jobs away from people.
Yeah. Or maybe if anything, they're taking high level jobs.
And but they're
Mm,
prepared and educated to do that.
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
I'll respond to that for a second.
Okay.
Um, if you come here and you're a legal immigrant and you're working here and you get a job, you're paying taxes and you're not vexing the system and you're contributing to the economy. Now, let's say you're here, you're not working legally. If you are employed, you're not taking taxes. You're still receiving some kind of benefits from the government. Um, and what you're receiving from the government is really more than what you're producing economic terms. Yeah, that is a drain on the economy. Um, but that's really more complicated
Extremely complicated.
for example, all our agricultural here, most of that is taken out of the fields by illegal immigrants that come here.
Mhm.
And he is going to have them deported. Okay, you got two things. Those people are very easily exploited. And second, they're poorly paid, and you're not, Americans aren't going to really fill those jobs to the capacity they will. What does that mean? Higher food prices for everybody. So it does have negative. So it can't, if that person is doing that illegally, whether they are not in the paying paying the taxes um, and only taking in taxes, yeah, that it would be a drain of a person who's not legally here to be able to do it. Right? But like what I mentioned about agriculture, okay, they do come here and fulfill jobs that others aren't going to do. So they may be taking tax, consuming taxes and different benefits they get, but they're also keeping the food prices lower. So
Well,
But they're also
it's
contributing significantly by their labor.
yeah,
So
they're contributing, and what they are getting paid, they're consuming. So the question is,
unless it's
you
a
add it all
gross,
up.
would you agree with me? Unless they're grossly ripping off the system, I think that people, I work in the Virgin Islands in the summertime.
Oh, I'm not
And
saying that they're grossly ripped, and I don't think there's. I agree with you. I don't think that is hurting the economy very much. Um, no, they're not here grossly getting big Social Security checks uh,
they're
or
really,
other kind of checks. No, they're not. No, my point is simply it's more complicated than that. It may not be a big problem, but you have that interplay of things.
yeah,
And
yeah, but they're um, they are contributing significantly to the functioning of our society.
oh yeah, yeah, and we'll find out just how much soon as they all get deployed.
if yeah, yeah. Just to throw in my own 2 cents there.
But you also get that exploitation. It's all.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah,
look at back, and a lot of people won't remember this. You and I will, and I guess Barnabas, you would too. But 1964, they ended the Bracero program, sent all these Mexican farm workers back to Mexico because they said they were taking jobs away from the Americans, and so they sent them away. And what happened is that the farmers did not, well, in many cases, did not replace them with American workers, but with mechanization.
Yeah,
So it did
yeah,
absolutely nothing for American
Yeah.
workers at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah. So Barnabas, I want to ask this question to you. Um, some would say that one of the root causes of the large scale migration that we see from the South was the decades of U.S. involvement in the destabilization of governments in Latin America, and that the U.S. should now bear the consequences of that meddling by taking in these immigrants. How would you respond
Yep.
to that?
Okay, first I would question the whole premise. It is certainly true the United States has gone down to Latin America and done all kind of coups and other political things. You know, they say being an enemy of America is dangerous, but being a friend is lethal. And if you go, well, that's the Ukrainians. But if you go, there is a long history of that. We support the democracies in Latin America as long as they vote the way we want them to vote. Um, but in to what degree and has that led to poverty and destabilization of those countries? Um, yeah, that has led to a big part of it. But if we're looking at the problem of immigration, say over the last 10, 15 years, the biggest cause I would suggest is these drug cartels, which have become so big and so successful that they end up completely corrupting these countries. Who runs Mexico? The drug cartels. President of Mexico doesn't run. No, she has no, she's going to do whatever does not really upset those drug cartels to as best she can. And they have become corrupt. Um, in fact, even went into Panama to try and help that problem by removing that one man. I the, the solution to the immigration problem, in addition to what Brother Simeon brought up, is coming up fixing the legal aspect. And the Catholic bishops have said this: if you're going to solve the immigration problem, you have really got to solve problems in countries uh, in Latin America. And the first biggest problem you have got to solve is the drug cartels down there. They are they're making economic growth, social stability, all of that possible down there. Um, so that is going to have to be the first problem. Personally, I don't think, and as an economist, I don't think we are going to be able our countries cannot get together and be able to solve the other problems we have down there until we first get those drug cartels somehow out of business. And like I said, they're not just here. They have become so large, they're working in countries all over the world. Yeah, our interference down there has certainly caused problems, but that most of that was over communist influences down there. But last 10, 20 years, what's really made it hard for these countries down there to solve their problems is these drug cartels because there's so much money in it and it just corrupts everything.
The larger question, too, apart from the drug cartels, because long before the drug cartels came into existence in Central and Latin America, you had the colonialization
Oh yeah, you have that whole.
of Africa and Indonesia and so forth. Um, and those nations took advantage of these people. They stole their natural resources,
Hmm.
etc. And those countries, um, and some of the immigrants, they're not all coming, as you know, from Latin and Central
Oh
America.
no, oh no,
There's an
no. We
enormous number of people coming
Most of the
from the
immigrants we
Caribbean.
have at Catholic Charities are actually from the Middle East.
Well, I'm thinking more of the Caribbean and the
Hmm.
unfortunate circumstances in Haiti.
Oh yeah,
with the Duvalier family stealing into two or three generations of that family,
Hmm.
emptying the treasury and leaving these people with,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking of what happened in Africa, and many of the immigrants that are coming to us are Africans.
Right.
So whether it's
Political
the drugs in Latin
instability.
America
Yeah.
or the destabilization of countries, you know, they will these leadership people, especially in Africa, they are
Oh, yeah.
elected, they rig the elections, 80 and 90 years of age, and they still will not leave. All these
Hmm.
young people are coming to us, highly educated, many of them,
Hmm. Well, the
looking for
leaders you're
jobs.
describing are not trying to develop those countries or solve their
They're
problems. They're
doing
there to
nothing for
exploit
them.
them.
They're doing nothing for them.
Oh, they're there to exploit them. This is
So,
the
I
problem.
mean,
Yes.
I think that a, a familiarity is important with the larger question of immigration, and it's
Mhm.
definitely in some sections of the world tied to the drug cartel, but
Latin America,
in
yes. Other
others,
well, other places now, and immigration. Middle East is a lot. That's just the violence and instability of all the stuff going
well,
there.
yes. Yeah.
And
So,
So the ocean of immigration is tied
well, yeah, I didn't mean to say
to many,
otherwise.
you know,
I was just talking about a specific. I thought the question referred to it. Specific Latin
well,
America. I was talking about Latin America.
yeah.
Well, yeah, you got all kinds of other problems.
So maybe as our last question to before we start taking some questions from our listeners, I'll address this to both of you. I'll let you go first this time, Barnabas. The U.S. bishops have kind of laid out what they said are six elements for a just reform of
Mhm.
the immigration system. You had, well, both of you at the beginning talked about the broken system, and so the U.S. bishops have put out six elements that they think that need to be addressed in the system. And one is the enforcement efforts should be targeted, proportional, and humane.
Mhm.
Humanitarian protections and due process should be ensured.
Mhm.
Thirdly, long-time residents should have an earned pathway to citizenship. Fourthly, family unity should remain a cornerstone of the U.S.
Mhm.
system. Fifthly, legal pathways should be expanded, reliable, and efficient. And sixthly, the root causes of forced migration should be addressed, which you've
Mhm.
mentioned. We want to look at the third one, because I think it might be the most controversial. Do you think that longtime residents here, whether they came legally or not, or we use the normal legal
Mhm.
pathways or not, should they have a pathway to citizenship?
Yes, I do. I think we come up to them saying, "You are not here legally, and here is if you want to do that. You want to live here, that's fine, but you have to come into this process of, of becoming legal here in one way or the other." I did it for I have a I, when I was out in Kansas, I play handball, four-wall handball, and my partner out there, uh, he was from Hungary. He wasn't here legally, and he didn't have the money to do it. I took him to Catholic Charities, and we got through it. And I think, oh, he wasn't here legally. Should he have been deported? No. He was here. He actually had his own business and all kinds. No, I think that is, I mean, with the caveat, of course, they're not a threat to us, of some criminal threat to us.
I would agree with that completely. And I also think um, this becomes, again, hugely problematic when you're talking about the second or the third generation of people, uh,
Oh, yeah.
that they already have kids here
Yeah.
and families established here.
Yeah. How and what?
How in the name of heaven do you sort that out? You know, except to provide pathways.
Oh, you
absolutely nothing. And so the
Right.
church has a role, a very significant role, in helping these people
Mm-hmm.
get established, get started. When you and I were in Thornton together years and years ago, that parish adopted a Vietnamese family.
Mm-hmm.
This would have been back in the 80s when that was a kind of opera thing to do. Um, and we provided them with a house.
Mm-hmm.
It was one parent, a grandmother, um, a grandparent, a grandmother, and a grandfather, and two little kids. And we provided them with a job. Within a year, they had paid the parish back
Wow.
for the car. They
Mm-hmm.
had found good jobs. The two little kids were throwing newspapers on the front porches and making a few pennies.
Yeah.
So, and I was happy that the parish provided that
Mm-hmm.
sponsorship. That's what we should be doing in order to help
Mm-hmm.
people. Catholic Charities is extremely important in that
Mm-hmm.
regard, as is the Knights of Columbus, as is the St. Vincent de Paul Society.
Mm-hmm.
All of these organizations are invaluable.
So we had a question from William on the chat who said, "Is it fair to say someone who comes here without authorization is committing a crime when it is really just a misdemeanor?" And I don't know if
Well, my misdemeanor parking ticket's a crime, so it's not a very serious one.
When you don't keep the laws of a given country, um,
Yeah.
it
Where does
puts you
that
in
stop?
an illegal
yeah,
status.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean I think
And if they're, and that's a huge burden to them because they have to figure out how you're going to live here illegally.
Yeah.
I think perhaps none of us are lawyers, and I think lawyers
Yeah.
would make some kind of a distinction there of
Uh,
civil and criminal
well,
offenses and so forth. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't think any of us are really qualified to answer that question. But you can Google it.
look at that, Bill.
Ask ChatGPT. Um, Josh sent in an email and he says, "Does one participate in the sin of defending immigrants, even if allowing women and children who are being trafficked or involved in these large groups of immigrants?"
What?
So does one participate in the sin of defending immigrants if some of the women and children who are being trafficked are involved in
Oh,
these?
that they're subjecting their own people to that?
Yeah, I suppose.
Is that the question that he's asking?
Oh,
If
yeah.
we, in defending immigrants, are we participating in that sin that are being committed against women and children?
The sin of trafficking against
Yeah.
only if you, only if you are knowingly and willingly participating in trafficking.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, how would you know that if you didn't?
Yeah. Hi, I'm a human
Although I
trafficker from
think he's
Latin
asking the
America. Can I live here?
question, if I understood what he was saying, he's saying the sin of
Yeah. Hmm.
defending what?
Immigrants.
Immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
is there sin in
yeah.
that?
Where's the sin in that? But I think he's getting to the sin of defending immigrants who are themselves involved in the crime of human
Trafficking their
trafficking,
own people.
Yeah.
trafficking their own people.
Thinking that sort of like, if you're driving the getaway car of a bank robbery,
Yeah.
you didn't rob the bank, but
Right.
you're somehow involved in the
Well,
guilt
I
of that.
think if you're consciously aware that you're doing that,
Yeah,
it
you
is
are
something
participating in human
conscious,
trafficking
sinful.
then.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Anne from email asks, since 2022, over 40,000 illegal immigrants from Central and South America, including Venezuela, sought refuge in Colorado. It created a tremendous strain on our economy. In my mind, we can hardly manage the influx of homeless Americans who reside here. Are you saying that we have a moral obligation to house these 40,000 immigrants too?
I don't know whether I would call it a moral obligation, although there's morality involved. I think uh, we have an obligation to take care of those who are already here, as well as those who are arriving, um, and do the best we can to take care of their needs. You know, it goes back again to what Barnabas was saying, the destabilization of these countries, and Venezuela is a classic example.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no food, and I was in Buenos Aires last year. Everybody that waited on us in terms of the shops and the restaurants, they were all from Venezuela, not from Argentina, because there's no food on the shelves, no
Yeah.
no medicine in the
Yeah.
pharmacies.
Yeah.
They're desperate people down there because of that.
And a lot of that was their own internal politics.
Well, of course, yeah.
It wasn't us destabilizing it, but yeah, it would make him a disaster.
There is a moral obligation, of course, to take care of people who are unfortunate
As
in
best you,
unfortunate
yeah, as best
circumstances.
you can.
And I know it does at times create a burden on the already existing structures. But this is where we come back to this ordo
Okay.
amoris. Um, you know, I don't know whether people, when they do, especially the politician, I thought it was quite interesting that suddenly, because of the vice president's sudden Catholicism, that Latin is now appearing in the public discourse. You know,
Right?
But
but there is the gradation as I read Augustine and Aquinas along after that. They're not using the word proximity. You know, Thomas Aquinas says, if your father isn't needy and there's someone standing beside you who is needy and he's not a family member, etc., you have an obligation to take care of that person. You know, just you don't follow that order amoris so strictly that you don't take care of the people that are needy.
right, yeah.
So there is a moral obligation. I mean, it comes with the Gospels,
Yeah.
and it's tied to the Samaritan parable, one of the most powerful
Mhm.
parables that Jesus uses.
Yeah.
And I'm going back to something you said, early about, the immigration system being broken and how it's not being done very orderly. I can remember um, back then when all of these people were being brought here and dropped off and so forth, and it was creating a strain on the system. But at that time, the mayor of Kansas City said, please send some of them our way. We could use the workers. We need we need people to immigrate to Kansas City. So
Mm-hmm.
send some of them our way. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that if 100 immigrants show up in Denver that we have an obligation to house all of them. But see, if we had done things in a more orderly fashion from the very beginning, we
Right.
wouldn't have that problem to begin with. And so I mean, part of the solution could be, well, who, where could these people be taken better care of? We don't have the resources here, but someplace else may. So,
Here in this country, in the next 40 years, our young people today are having so few children that in a few years we're going to have the huge elderly population, and we are going to have a small population of people that can be in the workforce, and we're going to need immigration too. Well, otherwise, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, that's
because we got to have the workers, give the economy to support and that is exactly what's happening in Germany right now.
Exactly.
And and I think most of them are like from the Middle East and Islamic.
No, I mean, there's there. It's below zero, the birth rate.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's
But
one of
who are the immigrants?
Turkish. The Turks are coming.
Most of them are Turkish, and
And they're willing to do jobs that the Germans won't do.
yeah,
Clean the
and
streets.
then you have this response. People in Germany, think about it. You need these workers because you're in deep trouble and not very long ahead. But So, and the right part, the right wing, whatever they call it in Germany, is doing very well in this election, which is anti-immigrant. But what is the cause of that? If we need these workers, is it because they're so culturally different that the assimilation is just so difficult? You know, we're going to need immigrants here, and like you were talking about, you know, that's really who fills up our church. Well, we're low replacement level here and have been a long time. It isn't going to be long when this whole conversation is going to change. It's we need more of them.
Mm. It's
Really.
And that's one of the reasons why we have to fix the system
Yeah, and we have to get it fixed we get
so they can come legally.
so they can come here legally without all the burdens of not being here legally. Yes.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I think it's been a very interesting conversation, but is there anything you would like to say? I'll give it to you first, Barnabas. Anything you'd like to say to kind of wrap things up?
Um, I would simply say this as Catholics, you have two things. You have the protection of the border for security and safety reasons. Oh, criminal gangs, you can't have criminal gangs and drug dealers coming up here, but people have the right to immigrate, and we can benefit from their immigrating here. Taking those principles and putting them in practice, it's going to be a hard thing to do. And what you see in the church now is Catholics accept the two things, but they'll emphasize one over the other. It's very hard in real world terms to apply those both. That is really what we need to try and do. And so for Catholics, remember, most of us are going to be in one place or the other. Well, you can't exclude one or the other, and you're going to end up kind of emphasizing one or the other. And no matter what it is, working that out so it fits Catholic teaching, it's never going to be perfect and it's always going to be very hard. So
I,
love your fellow Catholic brothers you argue with and sisters.
and I completely agree with Pope Francis when he talks about the need for creating a social fraternity. And what does that mean? It means that we are open and listening and appreciating the tremendous gifts that these people are bringing to this country. Uh, our culture is Greco-Roman, and that's only been around for about 2,000, maybe 3,000, 4,000 years. These folks that are coming from Vietnam,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Korea, they're coming from cultures, the Philippines, they're coming from cultures that predate the Greco-Roman culture by thousands of years. They're enhancing us with their food, their music, their way of thinking. Uh, we're not being we're not being we have to appreciate what they're bringing to us, and we're not being gypped or deprived of their presence.
Oh, one of the greatest gifts God ever gave man was Thai curry.
I thought it was Irish scones.
Thai curry.
Okay.
That's why I like living with the Indian brothers. They make
it to the real debate. All right. Thank you. Thank both of you. Thank you for the Simeon. Thank you for the Barnabas.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're still all on speaking terms, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
And thank all of you this evening for watching. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I would ask you to please like it and also subscribe to our channel. Invite others to watch as well. And I think others might enjoy watching this episode if they missed it. And please check out our other content on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. On Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, we have Good Morning, Good People. Every Thursday, we have a simple word, which is a homily based on the readings for the next Sunday. So that gets you prepared for next Sunday's Mass. And we also have a series on vocations and on ministries that the Capuchins do. All there on our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram channel. So we invite you to look at all of those. And I invite you to join us next month. Again, this comes out always on the third Thursday of the month. And next month, I think we're going to have a very interesting episode, uh, which we titled "Would You Baptize an Alien?" And this time we're talking about an extraterrestrial.
Already have.
So please join us next week. Thank you very much for watching. Good evening, and may God give you peace.
Thank you.